The question that I think, to be political about it,
Oh, we haven't been political at all before, have we?
I don't want to see this Labour government in office for a moment longer. And the worry that people will have, I think, in order to get that change, is either uniting the right in some way, or the worst thing that I could envisage, putting aside the rise of the Green Party under a new leader, maybe the Jeremy Corbyn, Zara Sultana factor of the new party that will take, your party that will take votes away from Labour. But if there is a split vote on the right between what could be Reform government, that are doing incredibly well in the polls, and the Conservative Party, that lets Labour in through the back door. What happens then? And how can the Tory party stop that from happening? And what is the future, therefore, if the next set of elections, the local elections next year, are terrible? If the Tory party changes its leader again, who comes forward? How do we get into a situation where we have a Conservative, whether it's the Conservative Party in government, but a Conservative government under Reform? How does that work?
My view is, and again, just to fill in on what I've been doing in the course of the last 2 years, in February 2024, I had one of these extraordinary things that really do change your life. It actually took place in an Islington restaurant. So I suppose maybe in the future it will go down as our granita lunch, when I actually had lunch with somebody who is now my friend and political colleague, Mark Littlewood, who just founded this thing called Popcom. And in the course of that lunch, I persuaded him to the kind of analysis of our politics that I've been giving you. That's to say that the Tories had bought into what Labour had done, and that the only way we could get ourselves out of this mess was by what we called the Great Repeal and Restoration. Now, and we've gone round the country, and we call it evangelizing. I call myself a high church atheist, and I'm although I reject Christianity, I love the Bible. I was brought up on it as a Quaker from a northern working class background and whatever. It's very familiar to me, and we've been trying to convert people, again that sort of word, to the message of the Great Repeal. And I think this is the way forward, Charlie. I do not think that there's any point at this moment in worrying about what the complexion of a right-wing government might be. The politics is too fluid. Things are changing at an absolutely spectacular speed. And by the way, the likelihood of reform, I think, remains overwhelming, even if they don't do very well in the government of their county councils and all the rest of it. Because remember, and here I'm afraid it's kind of, I'm teaching my grandmother, much younger though you are than me, to suck eggs. The reason that people voted Labour last year wasn't that they were voting for the Labour Party. The Labour Party had no manifesto. They were voting against the Tories. But it's taken the Labour 12 months to get into the same position of hatred and contempt that it took the Tories 14 years. So having tried the Tories, now having tried Labour, as the opinion polls show, the overwhelming likelihood is that they will try reform. You will remember the remark of Trump, and I don't think I'm quoting it fully correctly, but I've got it broadly right, that if he walked naked in 7th Avenue and shot a Republican, the only vote he would lose would be that of the dead man. And I think there's a measure of truth with Nigel in that position for the moment, unless all that blows up. Nevertheless, what I'm trying to do is to build up a common agreement on the right on policy. And I think if we get a broad common agreement on policy, that like Thatcher, this was what Thatcher did. Thatcher realized she had to undo. She to get rid of what Labour had done economically before it was possible to do anything else. I'm saying we've got to undo this extraordinary series. It's a bit like Gulliver's Travels. It's Gulliver in Lilliput when this giant is tied down by all sorts of bonds and chains and whatever. And the structures of the Blairite state exist exactly like that. We've got to break them first. And I think if we can build up that broad agreement on the right, Um, do you know what? People will wake up one morning and think, well, actually, do you know what? We all really do think the same. Shouldn't we stop fighting about it? And I see that as being the proper way forward. I also think it does something else. If we can persuade not simply our parties and our parties and our party leaders, but the broader British public. See, I think the British public is lost at the moment. They again, you talked about COVID. COVID did terrible things because it persuaded people that there really was a magic money tree, that there really was something for nothing. It broke the habits of work, of industry, of the idea that you take out what you put in. All of that was profoundly damaged. So there's also, of course, that sense of deracination, which has followed the aggressive changes resulted from unwanted immigration, the profound sense of shock, of loss, of transformation of familiar neighborhoods, the deliberate attack on inherited historical institutions and inherited values, all of these things. So we have a people that is crying, again, these are religious terms. We've a people that is crying out for something. There's that wonderful biblical phrase, the people are hungry, they're not being fed. And I think we have an open goal, which even Farage is only filling in a very hesitant, minor sort of way. There's a terrible sense of loss, Charlie. You know, when people talk in this almost sad, nostalgic way. I mean, what I've been astonished about is how little violence there's been. The overwhelming mood is one of loss. People know they've lost something. And any politician that's capable of explaining that loss, what can be done to fill those gaps, what can be done to create, building on what was there before, but something that will sustain, that will feed that hunger. Such a politician will sweep the board. And in his own coarse way, MAGA did that in America. And we really haven't quite got the equivalent. Again, Farage always pulls back from that final edge of populism, which carried Trump forward. I mean, the extraordinary thing about Trump, you know, is the breadth of the coalition that he assembled. So you had MAGA, you know, funny chaps wearing kind of wolfskins and doing strange things. And at the same time, you had in that inauguration ceremony, again, very, very much like the inauguration of a Roman emperor, except that Trump wasn't carried on a shield. Who would have been capable of picking him up is another question. But you know, you had the family lined up there, and then you had the wealth of the world. The fact that you're capable of commanding the heights of 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 um, of the Californian tech elite, along with you know, the brawling Stephen Bannon. That's the width, breadth, depth of the coalition assembled by Trump. It was what briefly, of course, Boris managed. It was famously what the late 19th century Tory party managed, first envisaged by Disraeli and then, rather to his own surprise, handled by Salisbury. I mean, that was the coalition. It was there right through in the working class Toryism of the 20th century. My own grandfather, my own family was an extraordinary political mixture. My father, pacifist, Quaker, Lansbury Labour supporter, and all the rest of it. My mother, liberal, and my grandfather, who lived with us, working class Tory, and he voted for Churchill in Churchill's first seat in Oldham in, I think, 1900. You know, and it was that coalition that made the Conservatives great. And it's any party of the right will have to reassemble that in Britain. But again, the kind of leadership, the imagination of leadership that you were required to do that. I don't see it yet. I don't see it certainly in Farage himself. He's the nearest, but he's only part way there. And I suppose that really is likely to be the salvation of the Tory party. That the as it were, the field is still open. All is not lost because the genuine alternative has not appeared.